Now, only a few industries will be allowed to return to business during the current lockdown, and as part of relief efforts, South Africa's Department of Labour, or rather in Employment and Labour, announced on Monday that it had paid a total of 1.1 billion rand to beneficiaries of the Unemployment Insurance Fund from the 16th of April to date. Now, government has also put forward an offer of 350 rand grant for unemployed people. But the experts in the labour industry are inundated with queries about who qualifies for these benefits. Labour analyst Terry Bell has kept a close eye on developments, and he now joins us from Cape Town via Skype for some key issues affecting the labour fraternity. Mr. Bell, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Is going to be in the detail, and that's still to be announced by the various ministers. I mean, we can only speculate at this stage exactly what it will mean. But that 350 rand was supposed to be paid to those workers who've become unemployed because of the lockdown, but who were not covered by UIF. Well, who are they? Are they the waste pickers? I regard them as being employed. They worked every day of the week. Are they domestic workers who, working for a number of employers and not being registered for UIF, who knows who they are? I mean, the detail here is incredible. It's all well and good to have a stimulus package. Great idea. Get more money into the economy. However, it's the implementation that matters. And here in the Western Cape, I think the president did announce that cigarettes would be available. I mean, no one really bothers, I think, too much apart from smokers. But here in the Western Cape, we have this irrational ban on the export of wine. And that affects and it threatens the jobs of hundreds of thousands of workers right across, not only farm workers, with whom he did actually thank. And it's a major export currency earner. And let's face it, we really need the money. So the UIF, as I think earlier in an earlier program, as well as Nzima Vabi of SAFTU, actually mentioned that there'd been this problem with the UIF, and there has been a tremendous problem. We have a lack of capacity in all these areas, and we've been caught short. We cannot afford to be caught short because we now have a situation of perhaps 8 million people who need to be fed. And if it wasn't for religious groups, human rights groups, community and civic groups getting out there and helping to feed, we'd have even more people hungry. So again, it comes down to implementation. And from a working point of view, I think workers are desperately worried at this stage because we've already lost a lot of work. In our own neighborhood here in the Western Cape, in Muizenberg, where I live, a number of small businesses have already gone under. And workers whom I've known for years, who worked for places for 10, 15 years, will apply for UIF. They will get it. But UIF, for example, if a worker has been working for years and earns, say, 10,000 gross, 10,000 rand a month, well, they only qualify for 3,600 and a bit. Now, if you've been used to living and you have commitments at that level, to suddenly come down and it only lasts for 48 months, for 4 years, and then your UIF is finished. So it's a desperate situation, and I hope the various ministers will do something to clarify some of the confusion that exists and to try to spell out exactly how these various measures are going to be properly, thoroughly, transparently and accountably monitored.
Right. And the president said businesses must resume in a phased manner, and some businesses, he said, will be allowed to operate, but then under very strict conditions. To get a sense that there was much clarity with regards to where employees stand.
I don't quite understand what this means. He did also mention 1/3 of the workforce. Does this mean workforces on mines, which have already been given 50%? Or does it mean in quarrying? Does it mean, for example, a little retail business with a staff of 3 that only 1 could come in and maybe couldn't operate the shop, the retail or whatever it is competently? We don't know. Again, it comes down to detail. And I'm afraid nothing was spelled out. I was disappointed in the fact that it wasn't. Nothing was spelled out. I've always felt in any event that everyone talks, we have a national coronavirus command council, which sounds very warlike, and we talk about a war against this virus. Well, why don't we then, because we're running short of money and going to the IMF, World Bank, etc., BRICS Bank, why don't we finance this war in the way that wars have always been financed, through taxation, through heavy corporate taxation. I don't know if you are aware, but during the Second World War, for example, in Britain, the highest tax rate for the extremely wealthy got to 99.25%, and it only dropped to 90% after the war.
Well, so many companies, Mr. Bell, had forced workers to take both the paid and unpaid leave. I mean, this is despite pleas by the Labour Minister, who called on companies to show what he calls social solidarity by not forcing workers to take, paid leave. I mean, paid leave, it's safe, you're using up the paid leave, it's safe to say, may leave the workers financially vulnerable after the lockdown. So, but then the companies, did they have a choice?
I think, unfortunately, many companies have acted in a way that we might describe perhaps as certainly as immoral, and in some cases might even be illegal. We've always had a problem, and this has been going back over 20 years, of companies that have never even docked the UIF payment. UIF in your wage packet, it's 1% of your gross wages goes into the, or should be paid to the unemployment insurance fund. Many employers will dock that and still not pay it. It's illegal and they should be prosecuted, but many have got away with it. In some cases, the employers do dock the wages, do pay it in, do register, but then they don't make the application. And there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done, and they haven't done that. That also is a major problem. There are so many problems now that have to be sorted out, quite apart from the fact that we've got this virus rampant all over the show. We've got a major problem for most workers, particularly workers at the lower end of the pay scale. They're the ones who are suffering most, they're the ones that are losing their jobs fastest, and they're the ones who are finding extraordinary difficulty at gaining access to the currency, the finance that the government has promised, the stimulus package which should go to them through UIF, through whatever, and the special means that the government has offered employers, forget what the actual term of it is, if employers cannot meet the full wage and can show this, the government will top it up. Well, those are for employers who are keeping abreast of things, have been honest and open. Unfortunately, many employers have not. And that is a problem. There are 1.5 million employers who are registered with UIF, for example. So a lot of people, a lot of workers, and a lot of work that needs to be done. I don't think the South African Revenue Service is up to collecting. I don't think that UIF have shown that they have the ability, the capacity to do this properly. So we're going to have to, I don't know, come up with some new way of implementing and making sure that this is done transparently, that the corruption where it does arise, as it has done with food parcels, etc., is actually cracked down on very rapidly.
Now, these unscrupulous companies that I've just mentioned, which continuously deducted UIF monies from employees, but then did not dispense those monies to the fund. I mean, it is very illegal, as by all means, it is illegal. But then, so what should happen to the employees? Do you think some sort of provision needs to be made for these employees? Because it's not their fault that the companies did not dispense the money to the UIF. Can the government not deal with the companies later and in the meantime provide some sort of relief or provision for these employees?
That is what I would hope. And this is what I'm talking about, the detail. I'm hoping, perhaps against hope almost, that the ministers will spill out all these problems, recognize the problems in the first place, acknowledge the mistakes that have been made. I mean, such as this banning of wine export, such as, for example, even the stopping of rotisserie chickens and that sort of thing, and hot food. 1 minute doing one thing, flip-flopping to another. Admitting the mistakes, looking at them honestly and saying, look, we're in a mess at the moment. It's a mess not of our making initially in terms of the virus attack, but we now have to get together and really do the job properly. And if we can't, then let's pull in other people who can help us. That's all we can do. At the moment, I fear that we have a problem with implementation, that whatever the good intentions of the government are in terms of stimulating the economy, I think it's an inadequate amount, 10%. I think you're talking perhaps a need of even R1 trillion to really get the economy going again, even on the present system.
All right, Mr. Bell, we thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. That was Labour
Thank you.
analyst Terry Bell joining us via Skype.